So let's go to the slides here.
Yo creo que es igual.
Esa no es esa isla.
Yo pregunto.
Creo. No dije que supiera.
So it's already recording, Nia?
Yes.
All right, good.
Okay. Can you guys see that? Well,
Oh, yeah.
okay. So today we'll be talking about animal treatment, plant-based eating, and what the Bahá'í Faith has to say about it. And at the end, we'll also go into some other aspects of that. I will be mainly doing it, but my dad will pitch in, and also we'll have some discussion throughout the presentation. So feel free to speak up if something that interests you or you have an opinion on something. So the format of today, so we have the arrival, and more people might trickle in as we go along, but next we'll have an overview of the main points, and then kindness to animals, quotes and discussion, eating meat/animal products, quotes and discussion, and development of society, quotes and discussion. And then we'll look over some other benefits of plant-based eating and treating animals well, and then a final discussion and any closing questions or remarks. And then at the end, I can also send you the link to the presentation if you want to look back at it for any reason, and then I can collect some emails to send the link to the recording too. And here are some of the main points throughout the presentation today, based on the quotes that are that will be shown and read. Most kindness must be shown to animals. We are not meant to eat meat, or at least our teeth or maybe our body anatomy isn't meant to eat meat as our primary source of food. If we can, eating plant-based is better. We can still have our vigor, our energy, and that the future is plant-based, or that the Bahá'í Faith says that in the future, meat will no longer be eaten and our main food will be fruits and grains. So here's the first quote. I'll see as we go how much time we have, and we might end up just reading the main points, but I guess I'll just start with reading the full one on this one. Then, O ye friends of God, ye must not only have kind and merciful feelings for mankind, but ye should also exercise the utmost kindness towards every living creature. The physical sensibilities and instincts are common to animal and man. Man is, however, negligent of this reality and imagines that sensibility is peculiar to mankind. Therefore, he practices cruelty to the animal. In reality, what difference is there in physical sensations? Sensibility is the same whether you harm man or animal. There is no difference. Nay, rather, cruelty to the animal is more painful because man has a tongue and he sighs, complains and groans when he receives an injury, and complains to the government, and the government protects him from cruelty. But the poor animal cannot speak. It can neither show its suffering nor is able to appeal to the government. If it is harmed 1,000 times by man, it is not able to defend itself in words, nor can it speak justice or retaliate. So we'll go through a few more quotes before we open up the first discussion. Basically, you can see here that a lot of times we think of animals as inferior. It doesn't matter if we hurt them for personal benefit, but here it's saying that both man and animal sense pain, right? Both of them are worthy of treatment that is not cruel, and that we should exercise the utmost kindness towards every living creature. And we think, show loving kindness to everyone who crosses your path, and that doesn't only include your neighbors or your family members. It includes every human, it includes every creature, it includes the other creations of God. So the first one. And then here, let's see. Okay. And we'll start from here. The feelings are one and the same, whether ye inflict pain on man or on beast. There is no difference here whatever. And indeed, you do worse to harm an animal, for man hath a language. He can lodge a complaint. He can cry out and moan. If injured, he can have recourse to the authorities, and these will protect him from his aggressor. But the hapless beast is mute, able neither to express its hurt nor take its case to the authorities. Therefore, it is essential that ye must show forth the utmost consideration to the animal, and that ye be even kinder to him than to your fellow man. Train your children from their earliest days to be infinitely tender and loving to animals. Train your children, if an animal be sick, let them try to heal it. If it be hungry, let them feed it. If thirsty, let them quench its thirst. If weary, let them see that it rests. And so in the other one, we kind of learned that we should show kindness to both man and animal, but this one seems to suggest that we might even strive to be even kinder to animal, for they cannot speak out for themselves. And you can think of, for example, I was thinking, they have this thing now where you can get paid to offer yourself to experience these coronavirus, like the testing of the vaccines and stuff, to kind of experience how that will affect humans and if that will help or not. And I was thinking of that, and some people are like, oh, that's not good, they could die, but they're getting paid for it and they've volunteered for it. Yet, with things like animal testing or other experiences where an animal is experiencing cruelty, they can't say, I want this to happen to me, or, oh, please stop, or I'm experiencing pain right now. They can't do that. And I think we as humans and the creation of God that has a soul and has the comprehension should speak out for them and do whatever we can to protect them from having this cruelty. So before we go to the next one, I wanted to know if any of you had thoughts about that, or if anything in here has surprised you, so I guess we'll open, you can unmute yourself if you have any thoughts about these initial two quotes. Ronaldo?
Just a reflection. Let us remember history, because I think history helps us put a framework. I'm not at all questioning what the quote that you gave us. It's all very true. But there's a history of humanity that goes back a long, long time ago. They say, the scientists are more or less in agreement that humans, as the ones that we consider humans, have been around on Earth about 200,000 years. But, the ones that really say Homo sapiens has really been around 20,000 years. Okay, from that time, from to here, and before this type of revelation came about, man has been in an environment in which certain types of animals have definitely been at a tremendous danger, if not death, if they were not careful. So they grew accustomed to a relationship with animals in which they had to be on the defensive or attack mode in order to survive. And that became the norm. So when it comes up to the 20th century, treating animals with this inheritance that we have from so far back, it is not surprising that we behave the way that we do behave towards animals. That does not mean that there cannot be an evolution in our spirit in treating animals different, more compassionately. But what I mean is that if you want to expect a change to occur to a non-animal diet in the future, it's going to take time, because this has to go in very deep into the soul of humans in order to be able to say animals deserve far more compassionate treatment than we have been giving them. If you go out into the countryside or into a forest, and a bear comes up to you and stands 7 feet tall and growls at you, you better take flee. Otherwise, one bite of that animal is going to tear you apart. So there is a fine line between survival and amenable companionship with animals. It goes the same with animals such as bears, tigers, wolves, dogs that are vicious, snakes.
But just one thing, I think we're about to get to a part of the presentation that's going to address some of what you're talking about. So
Okay.
I think the issue of dealing with animals, especially ones that are vicious or whatever, I think that's one of the quotes. There'll be a quote coming along that talks to that directly.
Yes. Oh, did somebody else have something they want to say?
Oh, there's just one other quick thing I had to say that I thought was this. Once I read these quotes, There's one friend I have that spends a lot of time taking care of animals. I mean, a lot. She heals animals from injury to like 8 months later or something till they're free to go in the wild. And she's spending night and day taking care of them. I thought, man, shouldn't she be spending some of that time on people? You know, animals are important, but people are important too. But you read these quotes, and it seems to suggest that we should be having utmost kindness towards animals as well. So, you know, maybe there needs to be both. A lot of both.
Yeah, and I think you, Ronaldo, for for mentioning that point, because it's true. You know, we should also look out for our safety. And you know, obviously, if a bear comes, you shouldn't be like, "Oh, come bear, let me hug you." You have to look out and say, "This is a danger to myself. Let me move out of the way," or take whatever measures are the most safe in that situation where there's a bear in front of you or a snake. And in a lot of cases too, people will kill the snake or something if it's becoming a threat to their family, and that's a little bit more understandable than just unnecessary cruelty. So I think that's a good point that you shared there. And it's the same case with humans. You know, if somebody's threatening your family, you're not going to go, "Oh, hi, please come sit down, have some tea." You're going to think, okay, I need to do something to get out of this dangerous situation. So I think that's a good point. So I guess we'll go to our next slide.
Well, I wanted to say just really quickly that I think education is the key here. I think there are two facets of the education. One is these spiritual teachings are very important for people to learn and to understand. And I think many, many people would agree with them, even though they are not Baha'is. But I think there's another facet to the education, and that is that people do not realize how much cruelty there is to animals that are being unnaturally. They don't, some of them would not be even recognize that as cruelty. But so there's another educational aspect of it, just the concept of what is cruelty and how does that affect the animals. But I think the most important thing is just education, and how to do that in a rapid way in a world that's connected in social media is not a really big question mark in this day and age. I mean, I think that the change can happen very, very quickly to a plant-based food if people understand these things. And I think the people can understand this if we really focus on educating humankind right now. And I think that will make for more peace in the world as well, because if you're kind to animals, then you tend to be kinder to your family, kinder to everyone. It's sort of like if you learn to be kind in one place, that learning can go over to other areas. So I think it has a really big, could have a big impact on peace of humankind.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, you know, part of this is the education tonight, and a lot of the things that I know now I didn't know when I was a child, because, you know, this isn't the priority of education in school or in other places in life. So I think definitely that education must be given to us in normal lives. And I think that part of becoming educated is that you can talk to other people and that you can show what you know, and even do your own investigating. So I guess we'll move on to the next slide here. Okay. Burden not an animal with more than it can bear. We truly have prohibited such treatment through a most binding interdiction in the book. Be the embodiments of justice and fairness amidst all creation. So before we move on to the next section, this is just kind of a concluding one for this section. But the discussion prompt that I have for this one is how it relates to dairy farming. And I know that, I don't know how the situation is in Belize, but I know that in the US, you know, the cycle that a dairy cow goes through within the dairy industry is just, it's very hard for them. And, you know, they get impregnated over and over again so that they can produce the milk. You know, their young are taken away from them. Every day they're just hooked up to these machines where they're just giving milk more than what's natural. And that, you know, their young are being given milk substitutes because whatever corporation is taking the milk that was supposed to be given to the young, and they develop these diseases that aren't natural. They live much shorter than they are supposed to because it's more than they can bear. And so after a while, they're just not efficient anymore to the industry, and so they get slaughtered. And so I wanted to know what any of you thought about this in terms of dairy, because a lot of times when you think of cruelty to animals, you think of just meat, but other animal products such as dairy, eggs, butter, cheese, they also have many bad qualities. So I don't know if any of you wanted to touch on this, just one or two people, before we move on to the next section.
Yeah.
Just to say that I find it most amazing that justice and fairness are mentioned, and I never noticed it before in relation to animals. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Ronaldo, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just another historical aspect that is very interesting. The reason, one of the fundamental reasons why the dairy industry developed was because the scientists discovered that those women that could not breastfeed because of whatever condition, they had to come up with an alternative. And the alternative was that they were familiar with cows giving milk. And so they thought the reason that if a thrives so good on cow's milk, well, this must be good for the kid. And so they actually started introducing milk substitute of mother's lack of milk by cow's milk into a child that could not breastfeed. When they discovered that this was a potential market, then they started finding out how they can actually pasteurize this milk, bottle it, powder it, and then push it in the 20th century that the industry had gained that they would actually be raising better a child with powder milk than their own milk. And there was a period about the 30s and the 70s in which women were very much encouraged to do bottle feeding with Nestle milk rather than mother's milk. Then they realized that kids were getting sick with cow's milk in as much as they were cholesterol, no, what is it called?
Lactose.
Lactose intolerant. Well, this was kind of obvious, but not admitted. A calf in 3 months grows what a baby grows in 2 years. The reason being is that the concentration of lactose in cow's milk is so high that only a cow can digest it and not get sick. And so when they found out that the kids were getting a lot of indigestion problems, what was the other thing? Fungus, there was burping, not being able, lung problems because of phlegm. Then women started basically revolting against this, and then the International Women's Movement declared that these industries' push for baby bottle milk was definitely not good. And they're gaining and winning the battle. So it's just to say that when an industry grabs hold of any food product and converts it into a massive produced product, it takes away most of all its natural virtues and creates more problems than solves what they're supposed to be solving. Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And today, the main concentration of information is these quotes and discussion around them. And if it weren't that, we could probably get into it more about, the health of dairy and stuff like that. But if you look it up, such a high percentage of people in the world have lactose intolerance. We're really the only animal that drinks another animal's milk and drinks it till we're, we don't stop. It's not like, oh, we're one, that's it, and it's, when you think about it, you're like, oh, that's kind of weird that we will go and we'll hook up a machine to another animal to get their milk, and then we'll drink it for so many years when, you're supposed to drink milk from your own mother, and that's and that's only until you're done kind of developing that in that stage. And if a mother is unable to give milk for some reason, then yeah, back then maybe this was created for that purpose, but today it's just gone far beyond that purpose. And because of that demand for it, especially the demand that's kind of unnecessary, the practices to attain this state have become more and more, or more cruel, I guess, more cruel. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So this one is opening the section on meat and animal products. So, okay. Oh, no, wait.
This is the one that with the wild beast.
Oh, maybe, okay. Okay, maybe I got a little lost. Okay, so I'll read this. Okay. Most human beings are sinners, but the beasts are innocent. Surely those without sin should receive the most kindness and love. All except animals which are harmful, such as bloodthirsty wolves, such as poisonous snakes, and similar pernicious creatures. The reason being that kindness to these is an injustice to human beings and to other animals as well. If, for example, ye be tender-hearted toward a wolf, this is but tyranny to a sheep, for a wolf will destroy a whole flock of sheep. A rabid dog, if given the chance, can kill 1,000 animals and men. Therefore, compassion shown to wild and ravening beasts is cruelty to the peaceful ones, and so the harmful must be dealt with. But to blessed animals, the utmost kindness must be shown, the more the better. Tenderness and loving kindness are basic principles of God's heavenly kingdom. You must most carefully bear this matter in mind. So this one definitely touched on Ronaldo's point earlier with, snakes and wolves and bears, all these animals that are quite harmful when you're within close proximity to them. And I think this quote kind of illustrates that, yes, you can maybe not show as much kindness towards them if it is going to be a threat to like it says here, can kill 1,000 animals and men. And compassion shown to wild and ravening beasts is cruelty to the peaceful ones. So I think that this kind of deals with what you were saying earlier. And then this one here, ferocity has characterized men even more than animals. The lion, tiger, bear, and wolf are ferocious because of their needs. Unless they are fierce, cruel, and unrelenting, they will die of starvation. The lion cannot graze. Its teeth are fitted only for food of flesh. This is also true of other wild animals. Ferocity is natural to them as their means of subsistence. But human ferocity proceeds from selfishness, greed, and oppression. It springs from no natural necessity. If the animals are savage and ferocious, it is simply a means for their subsistence and preservation. Subsistence and preservation. They are deprived of what degree of intellect which can reason and discriminate between right and wrong, justice and injustice. They are justified in their actions and not responsible. And then again, kind of reiterating the beginning point, when man is ferocious and cruel towards his fellow man, it is not for subsistence or safety. His motive is selfish advantage and willful wrong. And I've heard a lot of people say, we can eat meat because a tiger eats meat or something like that. But what this is illustrating here is that it's needed for them. That's where they get their food. That's what their body is made out of. That's what they're meant to eat. And if they don't kill animals and get that flesh, they will die because that's what's needed for them. And so later you'll kind of see what it's talking about the food of humans is, but here it's kind of saying that it's natural to them. It's part of their instincts. It's part of their survival. And that's technically not the same case for humans. Okay, so I guess since we're at the end of that section, sorry, I thought it was earlier, I guess we can maybe have one or two thoughts about this, about the kind of the need of animals like lions, tigers, bears to be a little bit more ferocious. And yeah, so does anyone have any thoughts about this before we move on to the next section? Ronaldo?
Sorry if I keep butting in, but this is so interesting. And it's so immensely good for reflection. If you took all the species of the world of animals and count them, and you will compare which are ferocious eating animals as compared to the ones that are plant-based eating animals, the plant-based eating animals will outnumber the other ones completely. Now, in terms of ecological balance, the meat-eating animals in some way contribute to the stabilization of a species that is plant-based eating animal, not to overgrow too much and eat too much of one plant or a series of plants and leave the rest without any sustenance. So in that sense, it's very interesting to admit that this is so, but that doesn't mean that we have to eat like they do.
It's a very good point. So I guess that leads to the next section, which is about what several quotes say about eating meat and animal products. And I just want to clarify that these are not all the quotes that deal with this or address this topic or topics near this. So after this, feel free to do some more digging and find some more quotes that have to do with this topic or other topics. If that's what
Yeah, when you say quotes, you mean these are actually quotes from the writings?
Yeah, so different quotes from Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah.
Okay.
Sorry, but where was this quote from?
I'll find it in the list.
Yeah, so
Okay.
some of
It's
them have
Abdu'l-Baha
the
from.
thing at the bottom, but for some of them we forgot to put it. But I know my dad has some of the has some
I'll
of
work
them.
on it.
Yeah.
Good,
So we'll get that to you.
It looks like Abdu'l-Baha.
Yeah.
It's like, sounds like Abdu'l-Baha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you for putting this together, Nia. I'm enjoying it very much.
oh, you're welcome.
And I'm glad that you're recording it so people can always come back to it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay,
So-
just
oh.
let you know, it's it says from a tablet of Abdu'l-Baha written to an individual believer.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's
Okay.
as much information as we got.
So this new section is talking about what the key figures of the faith say about what we're meant to eat. And I think I've heard a lot of people say, oh, we have canine teeth, or, oh, but we've always been taught that we're omnivorous or something like that. And we have the teeth to show so, or if we can eat animals, that's what we're meant to eat, And so I think this one's very interesting about the teeth. But now coming to man, we see he hath neither hooked teeth, nor sharp nails or claws, nor teeth like iron sickles. From this it becometh evident and manifest that the food of man is cereals and fruit. Some of the teeth of man are like millstones to grind the grain, and some sharp to cut the fruit. Therefore he is not in need of meat, nor is he obliged to eat it. Even without eating meat, he would with, maybe that's,
Live or something, yeah.
yeah, with the utmost vigor and energy. For example, the community of the Brahmins in India do not eat meat. Notwithstanding this, they are not inferior to other nations in strength, power, vigor, outward senses, or intellectual virtues. Truly, the killing of animals and the eating of their meat is somewhat contrary to pity and compassion. And if one can content himself with cereals, fruit, oils, and nuts, such as pistachios and almonds and so on, it would undoubtedly be better and more pleasing. So this one I actually read, let me see if I have it right here. I don't know if you guys can see the camera, but I bought this at the, where did I get it? I got it at the Baha'i House of Worship in Wilmette, and it kind of goes, I don't know, can you guys see my video right now?
Move it in front of your face. Move it in front of your face. There you go.
Oh,
Excellent.
so
I have fruits and grains.
Yeah, it says, I'll have the fruits and grains, please, by Victoria Leaf. But basically, this is written by a Baha'i, and it has some of these quotes in here. But it kind of goes over it, and I remember this is one of the main quotes in this book. So if you're interested in it, then maybe you can look it up. I'll have the fruits and grains, please. But this is a good compilation of quotes like this. And so we can see in the next quote here, it doesn't say that it's prohibited to eat meat or that it's unlawful in the Baha'i faith, but here it's kind of, or in my opinion, it's kind of implying if you can eat a plant-based diet and still be healthy, still be happy, then that is somewhat better. And
Yeah.
we'll go, oh, Ronaldo, could we just hold that for one to go to
Yep.
the next one? Because the next one is kind of
Okay.
similar to this one. This one is very similar to the one that we just looked over. So, regarding the eating of animal flesh and abstinence therefrom, know thou of a certainty that, in the beginning of creation, God determined the food of every living being, and to eat contrary to that determination is not approved. So we can kind of skip this piece because we kind of already looked over this one. Likewise, God hath given to the four-footed grazing animals such teeth as to reap the grass like sickle, and from this we understand that the food of these species of animal is vegetable. And earlier, of some animals, like you said, the lion, the leopard are endowed with these ferocious teeth and the claws to eat flesh. They cannot chase and hunt down other animals. The falcon hath a crooked beak and sharp talons. The hooked beast prevented him from grazing, therefore his food also is meat. So I guess we can open up some points after this if anyone wants to talk, but this one we kind of see that God determined the food of every bit of his creation, and that he has adapted their body to that, right? You see the animals that are meant to eat flesh will have, you know, claws or talons, right, or beaks. You'll see that the animals that are meant to eat more vegetables, to be more herbivorous, I guess, is they're more forfeited, right? They're for grazing the land, and they're not, you know, meant to fly and come down on their prey, or maybe not endowed with the fastest speed because they have to chase down their prey. So I thought that was interesting. So do any of you have some thoughts about this one before we move on to the next quote? I know Ronaldo had a point.
Thank you. No, just to reinforce what you were just saying about how the whole configuration. Remember, there was a pyramid at one time that I think in school we were taught, and the pyramid was like that, and at the very top was meat. WHO has now inverted the pyramid. At the very top, it has acknowledged that fruits, vegetables, nuts, and all the others are really our basic foods. And meat is at the end of the pyramid. Boy, did the meat industry got mad with them when they inverted that pyramid, because it is an acknowledgement of what you just said. So if we are back again to Susie's point, education here makes a whole difference. If you're taught in school that the pyramid meat is above, then you are justified that that's why you should be worrying about getting more off at the beginning all your life. But if they teach you that at the top are the essential oils, food, vegetables, and fruits, well, then you get taught what is much likely to be what we are supposed to be eating, because our teeth and our way of hunting or getting food is accommodated to that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, because I remember in learning school, you know, oh, you're supposed to eat this protein every day, and in the protein section it would have a picture of cheese and milk and fish and other like beef and stuff like that. It didn't really have pictures of other plant-based protein sources. And I remember they, you know, drink milk so you get that calcium, and eat cheese because you get the protein. And most of the food it was recommending that we eat would be proteins or carbohydrates. And I remember this was a few years ago, and in the health class they were like, half of your plate should be carbohydrates, and it had a very small section of the plate that's supposed to be like, you're supposed to fit all the fruits and vegetables in there. And I was thinking, how can you know, give such a small portion of the plate to that, when that, you know, has vitamins and the minerals? And so I thought that was interesting. And I remember looking at like Canada's recommended food plate a while ago, and I was very appreciative of it, because like half of the plate was devoted to just fruits and vegetables. And that has been contrary to a lot of the other like model plates I've seen, where it's like half of it's the meat, and then the, you know, other quarter is just like white rice or something, and then it has like a few like steamed broccoli to the side. So I think that's interesting, kind of reversing like that vegetables and fruit should be the main part. And I just found this little thing online that was just comparing some of the teeth here.
Oh my.
So this one here is going over kind of the same thing about the teeth. Know thou that these 4 teeth are not created for meat eating, this referring to the teeth in humans, although one can eat meat with them. All the teeth of man are made for eating fruit, cereals, and vegetables. These 4 teeth, however, are designed for breaking hard shells, such as those of almonds, right? And that's, again, when I've heard people, oh, but we have these canine teeth, we're supposed to tear meat. And, you know, which is kind of weird because most of the meat that we're given these days is so packaged that it isn't even, you know, in its raw state. So we don't even have to really tear anything. But you can see here, you know, there are almonds, those are hard. Carrots are, when they're raw, they're hard. And so there are all these hard foods that are plant-based that we need those canine teeth for. And so here kind of clarifies that it's not forbidden, it's not unlawful. Nay, the point is this: it is possible for man to live without eating meat, and he will be strong. Meat is nourishing and containeth the elements of herbs, seeds, and fruits. Therefore, sometimes it is essential for the sick and for the rehabilitation of health. There is no objection in the law of God to the eating of meat if it is required. So if thy constitution is rather weak and thou findest meat useful, thou mayest eat it. And, you know, here, again, it doesn't say, oh, you know, it's bad, you will not be a good Baha'i if you eat meat, but it's saying that it's, you know, maybe essential when you're sick or when you're feeling weak. It's not, it should be the forefront of every meal of every meal in your daily life. And I was going to say one thing, but I forgot what I was going to say. Maybe I'll remember it later. But I just thought this was interesting. And, oh, yes. And then later we see that it kind of says in the future meat will no longer be eaten. So it's kind of saying now, you know, we might need to eat meat when we're sick or when we're not feeling as good. But eventually in the future, it will no longer be needed for such purposes. So, Mom, do you have?
No, I was just saying, this is interesting because it says for the rehabilitation of health, and then it goes on to saying if it's required. So, and if your constitution is weak. So you think about like the Jewish people, you know, when they get sick, they make a big pot of chicken soup. And if you've ever had a sore throat, the chicken soup does wonders for your throat. You know, it clears it right. So there's like, it kind of reminds me of some of those old traditions where, you know, the grandma would cook something up for you until you got your strength back. But this doesn't say, you know, eat it if you feel like it and you're craving fried chicken. It's like for rehabilitation, if your constitution's weak, like I've heard bone broth, there's like certain things that are really good, and liver, there's certain things that are really good for certain conditions, but it doesn't say anywhere here, like, eat it all the time if you feel it. It's like if you find it useful and you're, so that's really interesting. Anyway.
There is
I wanted to say something similar, but in traditional Chinese medicine, well, traditionally Chinese in the past ate primarily rice and vegetables, and they did use some fish, different types of fish, and small amounts of meat, but as a spice more than anything else. And even today, when you go to China, you don't get, like, unless you go to something like McDonald's, you don't get a big piece of chicken. You get tiny little pieces, and I mean, they just don't have that much meat. However, traditional Chinese medicine does designate meat for certain conditions of health and for restoration. Yeah. And so it's really completely in alignment with what's mentioned here.
Chicken broth in our grandma's way of approaching health was incredible. If you went down with a cold, chicken broth was the thing that brought you up again. And women that had given birth, in many cultures, they were given at least for 5 to 10 days chicken soup to be able to recuperate as fast from their birth.
Those are some good points. So we'll move on to the next one. So also, if any of you need to leave at 8, then feel free to, but we'll probably stay a little longer to just kind of go over the final quotes, have a little bit more discussion. So if you do need to leave at any time, please feel free to, but we'll continue on for a little longer. So this one was kind of getting to the point I was touching on earlier. What will be the food of the future? Fruits and grains. The time will come when meat will be no longer eaten. Medical science is only in its infancy, yet it has shown that our natural diet is that grows out of the ground. The people will gradually develop up to the condition of this natural food. As humanity progresses, meat will be used less and less, for the teeth of man are not carnivorous, right? And then it says the same thing that we looked at before. Yes, the human teeth, the molars, are formed to grind grain. The front teeth, the incisors, are for fruits, etc. It is therefore quite apparent, according to the implements for eating, man's food is intended to be grain and not meat. When mankind is more fully developed, the eating of meat will gradually cease. And I think that we can see that, today plant-based eating has been on the rise, and there are more options than ever, especially in the US. They have, all these different substitutes now, and maybe those are not the best because we should be eating whole foods, but you can definitely see that today it's definitely becoming more of a norm than before. And many years ago, oh, you don't eat meat? Wow, that's so weird. But now it's kind of, oh, okay, that I know some people like that. So it's definitely, and the same thing with medical. It is only in its medical infancy, and now we have more testing than ever. We have more technological advances than ever. So I think that definitely we're going in that direction. And I think that's interesting that that's kind of like the goal is that we're not going to eat meat anymore. And I think that as for me, as I can see that I've been able to live a healthy life without eating meat, I think, okay, I'll stick with that because I don't need to eat meat. And I feel like if that's unnecessary, I'm causing that unnecessary cruelty and death that I don't need to cause. So I think there's, oh yes, and this one was something mentioned earlier that I just screenshotted here, that God determined the food of every living being, and to eat contrary to that is not approved. And then here it says that it's intended to be grain, it's intended to be those vegetables. So again, this goes to the point that, it's not unlawful, it's not, don't eat it, but it's saying here that this is not our natural food. And so if we can eat a more plant-based diet, that is better. So I think, yeah. So I guess we could have just one more discussion before we go into some of the final slides, which are just some of the other benefits of a plant-based diet. So I guess we could have some people here give their opinion. Anyone like to say? I guess.
Another idea that just popped in, that you haven't mentioned the environmental aspect.
Yeah, that's in the next slide.
Okay, good.
Yeah, why don't you finish the slides? And
Okay, I'll do that then. So here I just, again, the main focus for me for this one was to see what some of the Baha'i quotes say about this. So I didn't really go into depth with the environmental and health affiliation with plant-based diets or the lack thereof. But here I just put some of the main points with environmental, the environmental effects of animal eating. There's the fossil fuel usage, there's runoff into water sources from the waste from different factory farms, there's the methane produced by mainly cows, deforestation for grazing animals primarily in the Amazon, and of course the land and water consumption that's done by that. And so I have a few little graphics here just with some statistics here about the land usage, the water usage. So if you want to read that, feel free to do so. And again, I'll send you this these slides at the end. So if you don't have time to read everything now, you can do that later. I have another one here. I don't know if you can read that, but that it's a lot of the Amazon rainforest destruction, deforestation is due to animal agriculture. A lot of Earth's land is due, or I guess the usage of it is due to animal agriculture, and they've looked at how much land is needed to grow fruits and stuff like that versus how much is needed to grow animals, or I guess to host animals, and it's definitely much lower. And so when we're looking at kind of sustaining our planet and definitely global warming and everything, it seems like plant-based diet is definitely better for that. And it's definitely not packaged food from another country. It's local products, local fruits and vegetables. So, and then health.
The fires that were in Brazil wasn't the main cause of that the deforestation for the beef industry? They're one of the biggest producers of beef.
I don't know if it was the one in Brazil. I know, there have been several big fires, California and Australia, in the past few years, and I know that some of them have definitely been linked to that. Some of them have not, but it's true that there are fires that are caused by that for the deforestation. So I cannot say exactly which one, but again, if you want to do some research at the end of this to kind of look at that, feel free to. And the health, just kind of looking at diseases, heart disease, cancer, obesity, and how a lot of those are, your chance of getting them is decreased when you're eating more animal products, especially if they're packaged and not local, and the deficiency in key vitamins and minerals. If you're only eating meat and you're eating very little cruciferous vegetables or greens, and kind of behind me you see kind of like a variety of colors, then you can definitely get deficient in some of the key minerals and vitamins that are not mainly found in meat. And then just your overall health and energy, like I said, the vigor that you feel. And Dad, I want to call on you for this one. I think you or Mom mentioned that since you kind of switched to a more plant-based diet, she didn't find you falling asleep in meetings as often. Mom, didn't you say something like that?
Well, what I can definitely say is one of the things that has been a consistent, first of all, I can fall asleep at the drop of a hat. So falling asleep is very easy for me. But one of the things I think is caused that to happen is the amount of energy I think my body takes to digest food. And I've definitely noticed that the number of times that I'm tired during the afternoon has dropped tremendously since going to a more plant-based diet. It was almost like clockwork about 2:30, 3 in the afternoon. And there would literally be times where I'd be spending almost my whole time just keeping my eyes open. But now you eat plant-based and pretty soon you don't even feel like food's in your tummy, but you don't really feel hungry. It feels like normal, I don't have that drain. So it's been a huge improvement. It's definitely been a huge improvement.
Mom, did you want to say anything? Or? Oh, okay. So yeah, I think a lot of people, after a meal, they're like, oh, kind of holding their belly. Ooh, that was a lot. Let me go rest. But food is supposed to give us energy. It's supposed to give us nutrition. And so if you, eat a lot of good food, you probably won't feel as, oh, now I gotta rest and not do anything, because you should, feel that energy from the food that it's giving you. And then this next slide that I'm gonna show here was from nutritionfacts.org, and I know that they look at a lot of information. So I'm just gonna read kind of the highlighted things, but again, since I'll send you the slides, you can kind of look at this later. And the little parts in gray, they're links, so if you look at the slides, you can kind of click on those to find the links to the page. Researchers have shown that a more plant-based diet may help prevent, treat, or reverse some of the leading causes of death, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and high blood pressure. Plant-based diet intervention groups have reported greater diet satisfaction than control groups, as well as improved digestion, increased energy, and better sleep, and significant improvement in their physical functioning, general health, vitality, and mental health. Only one way of eating has ever been proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients: a diet centered around whole plant foods. If that's all a whole plant food, plant-based diet could do, reverse our #1 killer, shouldn't that be the default diet until proven otherwise? The fact that it may also be effective in preventing, treating, and arresting other leading killers seems to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. And earlier we were talking about the whole kindness to animals and going against cruelty and the environmental impacts. It just looks like there are so many benefits to this. And of course, you have to, humanity won't just switch, one day. It'll gradually kind of develop towards this. And you should also not just, oh, let me switch to this right away. Kind of look at, okay, what foods are available to me? How can I kind of make sure that I'm getting the key nutrients and vitamins? You don't want to just go into it without kind of doing your research first, or without going into, okay, to make sure I get my B12 and my iron, because then you could definitely kind of go against some of these health benefits that you are seeking to gain through adapting a plant-based diet. And then this last one here is just a little slide saying final discussion, any questions, final remarks, and saying that, you know, the Baha'i Faith encourages independent investigation of truth. So definitely after this, maybe look at the slides again if you want to, do some more research about what the Baha'i Faith says about this, the environmental impacts or the health impacts, and definitely look at how that applies to you, your environment, your family, because, you know, one diet does not fit all. You know, what I eat every day might not be what somebody else feels comfortable eating or what's best for them to eat every day. So definitely look at how that applies to you. So now I'll open this up for final discussion, so we can definitely have more speakers in this one. So I see Miss Susie would like to start.
I just wanted to say that in my son-in-law's family in Iran, one of the family members decided that according to the writings, and probably they read the things that you just gave us today, that we shouldn't be eating meat, and they just stopped eating meat, and then nobody in the family was eating meat. And now most of them are vegetarians, and like he's never eaten any meat ever. And he doesn't like to be even in a room where it's there, but I mean, he does. And, but still, you know, I mean, it doesn't smell good to him. It just doesn't even seem like food. So, but he's been raised that way. But it was due to a decision based on the writings that his family decided to do that.
Yeah, and I think, for me, definitely, you know, while you know, it's been, I don't know how long it's been. I know it's been about maybe like 2 years since I've kind of definitely gone, I guess, completely plant-based, and it was a few years before that when I was limiting, you know, maybe only eating some fish or some eggs occasionally. But, you know, now meat, it doesn't look like, it doesn't look appealing to me. I look at it and I'm like, oh, that that doesn't look that great. And I think definitely the more you you take on a plant-based diet, it's not as appealing to you anymore, you know, but you see, you know, a colorful plate and you're like, ooh, I want to eat that, right? So I think definitely, you know, what you eat most of is what you're going to be more attracted to. Anyone else wants
to give some experience for someone who went 50 years of eating meat and then recently just switched over, I still think meat would be great. But the thing is, what helps me is that it's the number of videos I see online on YouTube. And so you begin to watch some of these health videos and understand some of the implications of the decisions that we're making. And yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of think about it, and the idea of eating meat just isn't a top priority anymore. So I think it makes sense to go otherwise, but I have to say that it helps to continue to look at that information on a regular basis, and also to have a wife and a daughter who's way on the other end of this thing to kind of help keep me in line. So. No, but it's nice to have people who are doing the same thing, because it makes it easier. Because they're eating generally the same food you're eating, so it just makes it a little easier to get the job done. So it is very helpful having other people around.
2 comments. Nia, one I think that is very useful is never getting to the argument with people about taste. There's definitely very good taste in the way meat is cooked. You don't argue about that. You give them the credit. Yeah, that is it. It tastes very good. But what I think makes more sense is how good is that for your health? And then go through the process of trying to understand, or at least be exposed to the bad drawbacks of eating meat. And I think you didn't point out enough of them that are really very powerful. Then there is a question that I would pose to you, because it seems to me that it is a good, interesting question, is what is the alternative then with the cows? Because if we don't eat them for their meat, but we do use their milk for milk products, Is that a way of, an alternate way of looking at cows? But then what does that mean? Does that mean that we stopped producing milk in the factory way that they are producing milk today, chaining these cows to a row of feeding fences, basically, or do we leave them out in the open? If we leave them out in the open, do we cut more trees to have them being able to graze on grass? That is an ecological, interesting point of view to see where is the equilibrium, at least from the scientist, is an ecological guy's point of view.
Well, isn't it just a matter of, because they're talking about the food of the future, right? So isn't it a matter of slowly shifting, right? So you're increasing plants, you're decreasing dairy and meat farming at the same time. And so it would kind of, so that then the prices of dairy would go up and it would become a luxury. So even if it is eaten, it would be a special treat, you know, that you'd make a special cake, or it would be like cigarettes. You know, when they started increasing the price of those, then and educating people, they got you. It doesn't mean cigarettes don't exist or they're illegal. It's just that they're smoked a lot less, especially in the countries where they did marketing stuff. So.
I wanted to say something about cheese, because almost everybody in North America are definitely addicted to cheese. And I was in one of them, and I watched a few videos about cheese and the production of milk and cheese in particular. And I've read a few books and such. And actually, cheese is probably one of the most harmful things for your diet, in your diet. And plus the fact that, of course, they add a lot of preservatives and other things. But just the pure cheese itself is not really harmonious with the human system. And it would be good for people to look at how it's produced and what it actually is. It's sort of disgusting.
It's so yummy.
I know. But they're alternatives. They're really good alternatives.
It's terrible after I eat it, but no, and I enjoy it when I used to eat it. Been a long time though.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really don't think about like what is in the food that they eat. You know, when you look at an apple, well, I guess I couldn't talk about apples because they put a lot of glazing on those these days. But if you look at, say, I don't know, a local watermelon, you think, okay, this is a watermelon, you know. But when you look at a piece of cheese, what did they put in that? You know, what's the fat content? You know, are there a bunch of enzymes in there? Is, you know, where did the milk come from? What was the pasteurization of that? You know, and you don't really know what's in it. You just eat it and think, oh, you know, I might feel bad, but I'll just eat it, you know. So a lot of people don't think about, oh, you know, what's in their milk, or what, you know, what's in their food that they're eating. And I know we were on let me actually pause. I'll stop the recording now.